Again, and I'm happy to sign the books, out there and talk to you all. I am going to be doing some readings tomorrow, which Diane has kindly set up, and I read in person, but I also read long distance by Skype. For those of you who are psychics and mediums and whatnot, you know that energy is non-local, so you can read for anybody and do distance readings. So I do a lot more of that now than I even do in-person readings, because I've been on the road quite a bit and do a lot of interviews and programs and whatnot. So anyway, so I'm always available for that, and I'm just going to open it up now to your questions. Yes.
Where is the reading tomorrow, and also why me? Did you find any specific? Is everybody on track to get an NDE, and we're all going to turn into pillars of light, or is there something specific?
Yeah. So the first question is, where's the meeting?
Where's the reading tomorrow?
Oh, the reading. Diane?
Oh, you don't have a reading?
No. Okay. Is there possibility, or is it all?
No, there's.
Okay, so I'll scratch out what I said about the meeting. We're filled up. But if you have an interest, you can contact me afterwards. So, now, in terms of, is everyone on track for an NDE? Okay, this is, so you have to take this with a grain of salt, because this is one person's, this is my take based on the work I did. It seems as if the people that I spoke to, and I've talked at this point, I don't even know, thousands of people perhaps, who've told me their stories. Many of these people, their lives were referenced by darkness, okay? They could be turned. They were perfect candidates to be turned towards the light, because they were perhaps empathetic, or they could have empathy. They were led along that path of darkness for a sufficient period of time to make them ready for something, better. They were perfect candidates. I really think that who's a better candidate than somebody who's ready to give up? They were ready to give up. They were ready to surrender. And it's kind of beautiful in a way, so now I don't know if everyone's a candidate. I couldn't say, because I didn't interview everybody. I can only tell you about the people that I spoke to. But their lives did seem to be referenced by darkness, and they were ready to, they were ready to be turned and embrace a different way of life, a more spiritual, more meaningful, kinder way of life. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Yes, sir.
I was curious, when you talk about having a path of darkness, I've often thought of it as a path of learning. Like there was a purpose to be in that place. Maybe if it comes from another life, or if it's something that, is karma.
Right.
But yes, you're right. At a certain point, you've had enough. And the experience then shifts over to, hey, I need to, and all through, at least my personal experience, messages about what's real, what's true, even along that other path.
Right.
So it was like it was playing.
Yeah. That was very much the feeling that I had, from the information we got. It was like, this is very clearly orchestrated. The universe has an idea in mind. Did everybody hear his question, or his comment about, it's not so much that your life is referenced by darkness, but these were life lessons and learning experiences, and that you get to a certain point and you take those experiences and you go into more a different way of life. And yeah, I agree. I mean, you can call it, there's a lot of ways you can define it. And then he also said something about reality, and that was something that came up also quite a bit, and that I talk about in the book, because another question that a lot of the experiencers had was, why did the reality, the NDE, seem so much more real than this reality? And the answer seems to be that in your NDE you are completely 100% full consciousness, and detached from your physical body. It's our physical body. We live in a physical earth. There's a lot of it's all physicality here, and that weighs us down, and it's not. It distorts, our consciousness. you know, everybody has consciousness. Some people have more than others. Some people don't appear to have any at all. But you know, for the people who come back from NDEs, you know, they have more consciousness than others. You know, they're top-heavy with consciousness, which is what leads to some of the issues. You know, that leads to issues with their behavior. You know, they no longer know how to relate to everyday people, you know, because that's where you get these stories of people walking up to, well, you know, Robert Barr, who's in the book, told me, he said, did I ever tell you the story of the Chinese dragon red wall? And I said, no. And he said, well, I was in a Walmart, and there was a lady in front of me, and some voice said to me, ask her about the Chinese dragon red wall. So he tapped her on the shoulder and said, excuse me, did you just paint a wall in your house red? And she said, yes. And he said, well, was the Chinese dragon red? And she said, yes. And then he said, this voice said to him, this is her sister. Tell her that I love her and miss her. So he said, well, your sister loves you and misses you. And this woman said, who are you? And she ran out of the store. And he left the store and went out into the parking lot and wondered what happened. You know, he had no filter. And, you know, this is the problem. You have too much consciousness, you know, it's just kind of coming in and you just kind of go around, you know, bombarding people with it. So, yeah, it's an issue. But the reality of the NDE versus the reality on Earth, this is, you know, again, I think very much related to, this is the only time outside of death where you're going to have the ability or the chance to experience total and 100% pure unfiltered consciousness, which is the real reality, right? So, yes, ma'am.
Yes, it's when you were referring like to like you could see things. You know, can you like, you know, sometimes, you know, just hear things, okay, without seeing things? And since you lived in New York City, I'm asking you this question because when I was in New York and I went to One World Trade Center, it was very overwhelming for me, like this sense of earthbound spirits possibly, and or it's like energy. To the point where I almost cried, and what you said about, you know, Wall Street, because there's a lot of Wall Street people there. You know, many people are taken into everything's been rebuilt, and look at this, it's gorgeous, and the business aspect, and some people would talk to me, and I would try to hear them away from, yes, I'm glad everything's been redone and everything, but let's be respectful and remember that this is a cemetery.
Yeah. Well, so what you're asking first is about clairaudience versus clairvoyance. Clairvoyance is, you know, from the French, clair is clear, voir is to see, clear seeing. But, you know, many of you know there are many types of clairs. There's clairaudience, which is clear hearing. There's clairsentience, which is clear feeling. There's clear cognizance, which is clear knowing. Clairgustinance, you can taste things. Clair olfactory, those are less common. I have most of the clairs, so when I read for people, it's like going to the movies. So I just, you know, sit there and the information comes in. Sometimes, I'm trying to think, yeah, sometimes, you know, I just hear things. Actually, while I'm talking, I just thought of something. I'm going to pass this around. So this is an email sign-up sheet. And if you feel like signing up for my email, I won't delude you. I don't send out a lot of stuff. But if you feel like it, you know, sign up. If not, just pass it along. Thank you. There was a time that I went to a concentration camp in Prague. And I went through the museum at the concentration camp. And then I took a bus to the cemetery. And I got off the bus and I heard all this moaning. And I was like, oh, you know, and I got back on the bus and I didn't hear it. And I got back off the bus and I heard it. And then I went into the museum and I didn't hear it. And then I came back out and I heard it. So, you know, that was a time where I just heard and didn't see, you know. So it depends, you know. I generally have to focus. I focus in when I'm doing readings, you know. I screen out things, you know, in everyday life. I don't walk around open. I cannot do that. It's not, I just don't want to do that. And so when I'm working, you know, I'm just like your doctor, your lawyer, your real estate professional, you know, anybody else. You know, you come to their office and they sit down and they say, what's going on with you? And they have a consult and then they draw on all their experience to, you know, come up with some sort of answer. I do the same thing when I'm reading for people. I focus in, I get very quiet, I go where I need to go to get this information, but generally I don't walk around like that, and I don't want to walk around like that. So, but when I am doing readings, I generally am getting, I'm hitting on most of the clairs at one time. So, it just, the information just comes in like a movie. Yes, ma'am.
So when you see, are you seeing like with these eyes and hearing with these ears, or is it from a different level of, rather than these five senses?
It's, when you have a dream and you see someone in a dream, I just put it right back on you because I don't know what you call that. It's in your mind's eye, right? So, or if you hear someone, if you have a dream and you hear someone talking to you, which, by the way, those are not dreams, those are generally visitations, but, it's happening in your etheric field, or, and so I hear it as if you and I are talking right now, and I see it just like I would see, but, it's not happening in that plane. It's not happening in a 3D plane. So, and, and there are people who are psychic, who are blind and don't hear and all that, but when they're getting messages, they can hear or see. So, it's not reliant upon the physical senses. And by the way, I've taught classes where people have said to me, I took a workshop and the teacher said, well, you're not clairvoyant, so therefore you'll never be clairvoyant. And that's just not true. You can learn to do these things. Everybody has intuition. Intuition is nothing but a low form of psychic ability. And if you exercise your intuition, if you pay attention to it and accept the little messages that you get, it'll get stronger. And it's sort of like going to the gym. You can go to the gym for a couple months and you say, I'm doing all this work and nothing's happening. And then, then you look one day and there's a muscle there. So developing your intuition is the same. You keep doing it, you'll get better. And anybody could do it. And I've had workshops where I have people from all sorts of left brain professions, from the State Department to USAID to NIH, and they say, I can't do this. And the number one reason they can't do it is because they say they can't do it. As soon as you flip and say, yeah, I can do it, it seems to allow you to accept the messages that come in. And I've never had anyone in a class who hasn't done a reading, by the end of the class. So anybody could do it. It's just that most people, a lot of people don't want to, and that's fine. Some people are, there's a lot of reasons, but anybody could do it. So other questions? Let me get from this side. Yes?
First of all, since you mentioned classes, how would we get information on your classes?
So the best way is, so you can either go to my website. I have two websites, DebraDiamondAuthor.com or DebraDiamondPsychic.com, and you can sign up for my newsletter there. You could sign up, or passing around someplace the newsletter sign up, so that way you'll get all the information. I put out a newsletter if I have something to say. So if there's classes or some event, I'll put it out. When I do classes, unless I'm traveling, the classes are on the East Coast because I live on the East Coast. So sometimes I do expos in other places, and there's a class inherent in that.
So I want to mention a lot of what you've been talking about. For me, a useful framework is the concept of spiritual awakening, and I think, just like waking up in the morning, sometimes we wake up in a really startling way, and sometimes we wake up in this sort of gradual. And I'm an addictions counselor, and one of my favorite references is a piece called Why We Were Chosen. It's written by people in AA, and they basically say a parallel, which is because they are out of that judgmental place and because they've hit bottom, they have the opportunity then to be of spiritual benefit to other people in that position. And so I think it's a very useful piece. I've seen parallel Buddhist concepts. To me, I don't know if people have looked at this as a spiritual awakening, but it almost also sounds like what you described. Your mediumship abilities coming through in that way was a spiritual awakening, and it seems to be like all of this. And we have different ways of getting there.
Right. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I mean, in my case, I mean, this was definitely not something I was going for. You know, I didn't used to think as a little girl, geez, you know, I hope I get to grow up and be a psychic. You know, it's not something I ever thought of, or entertained. But it was pretty much thrust on me. So I didn't really have a lot of choice, because people come to me and say, how did you do this? Because I want to do what you did. It was thrust on me, you know, and I had to like get used to it. And it took a period of time. But, you know, I think what you say makes a lot of sense, you know, about the commonalities between our realm and, you know, some of these other, you know, other folks. So thanks for sharing that. Yes, ma'am.
How do you talked about screening out when you're walking, just in your daily life? I know it's probably a long answer, but do you have like a abbreviated, how do you screen out the noise?
Yeah, I pretty much just sent my intent that I don't want any of that information. I also don't get bad things in readings. I mean, I put it out there that I don't want to be shown anything bad. So I don't get it. You know, there's probably some of you who've been to psychics who, you know, the psychics maybe tell you bad things. First of all, psychics are not supposed to do that. But I don't get that stuff. So, you know, you can set your intent. But I also need to, when I'm reading, I have a little process, you know, to get into that space. So, and, you know, it's sort of like, you know, for any of you who are professionals, you know, you're probably, you know, focused and, you know, when you're doing your work, you're focused in on what you're doing. And that's, you know, really what I'm doing. So, but if you meet me at a cocktail party, I'm not thinking about any of that. You know, I'm just me, just like just you, you know, and we're just chatting. But yeah, it's, but I know there are lots of people who are open, and they're open all the time, and it's, you know, it can be an issue. Yes, sir.
You mentioned in your talk before, and I've read a little bit, what when people have an NDE, they seem to get a lot of knowledge or information. And many times when they come back, it seems they aren't able to express that or can't retain that. Can you shed any light on that?
Yeah, so the question is, in NDEs, a lot of people seem to have received a lot of information, but when they come back, they don't remember it or they can't express it. So what's that all about? So that was a question that many people asked me, because they said, you know, I know that I was given all this information in my NDE and I don't remember it. I was given all the information in the universe and I don't remember it. So, you know, I don't have a perfect answer to that, but I think perhaps there are some things we're not meant to know yet. And also, you know, if you have an NDE, you left your body, you had a life review with your dead relatives, you know, were out in the universe, you saw fantastic landscapes, you saw the light, you went through a tunnel, you know, you met your God, whatever, and then you were given the answer to everything in the universe. I mean, think about it, you know, and then you come back. Are you going to be able to function? I mean, these people can barely function. Yeah, it's tough, you know. It's like, what, you know, that's a big burden to carry. So maybe they're not supposed to remember all that. I don't know. I don't have, you know, the answer to that, but it's a big question. So, yes, ma'am.
Just to that topic, maybe it's just that they're getting the idea of the knowledge being totally different than what we see it as here. And that's what they're supposed to get, not the specific, you know, the specific topics or answers to the questions, but just the understanding of what it really means.
Right. Well, so yeah, maybe it's that this woman suggested that perhaps it's that they're just supposed to get an understanding of, you know, some of these other topics rather than the specifics. You know, so the universe doesn't speak the same language that we speak. They don't, like, they're not out there speaking English, you know, the way we speak it, you know, it's just not the same. So, you know, it's also possible that, you know, through telepathy or through whatever means, people get this communication in their NDE. You know, they know that they've gotten knowledge. But, you know, the key word with NDE is ineffable, right? There's no way to describe it. You know, you come back and you know that all these things happen, but how do you describe any of it? You don't have the words. Well, you don't have the words because this is not our realm. You know, it's a realm that is not at all constructed like ours. They don't speak the same language. It's just not part of our nomenclature. So there are lots of things that, you know, kind of get lost in translation. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, the way you were describing people being transformed or changed when they come back sounded very similar to me of, I have an adult son on the autism spectrum, and it sounded very similar to these people who have this diagnosis, who do not know how to function or understand what their purpose or mission is here. And I'm wondering if in the experience of any of your readings, have you had any experiences in giving readings to people with autism, or have any thoughts about that?
I'm sorry, I don't. I really don't. But there's a new movie out. Do you know about that? Ron Suskind's movie? Do you know about that? Ron Suskind? So I think Ron Suskind writes for the New York Times, and he has a son who's autistic. And the son learned to relate by watching Disney movies.
I have the name, it's Life Animated.
Life animated. Okay, thank you. Who have I not called on? Yes, sir.
Mellon Thomas Benedict claims to have died from brain cancer. He was declared dead, and the doctor signed a death certificate. And he stayed in that condition for an hour and a half. Do you know what the record is for someone who has been certified as being dead and then came back? Is it a day, a week, a month? How long?
I don't know.
He told some anecdotal stories about